The emergence of differences between powerful parties in Israel, the strike of pilots and senior officers of the Air Force, Lapid's renewed efforts to regain power and political civil war. Changes in the level of cooperation between the Israeli government and the United States, and finally the changes in the laws by Netanyahu. All these factors involved Israel for several years. Neighboring events that were not prevented and led Israel to a full-scale war. But where did these political and military disturbances begin? What caused a country with such a power to face unsolvable internal problems? Welcome to our channel, where we discuss global geopolitics and explain the complexities of global affairs. Today, we are going to objectively analyze a topic that has created significant discussions in the past few days. The victory of the Hamas group in the battle with the Israeli army, and who is to blame for such a great disaster. All this will start from January 2021 and from a place completely far from the Middle East and Israel, in the state of Washington, USA. Today, Donald Trump is mentioned as a dead man in politics, but don't forget that his fall as the President of the United States can have profound effects on other countries. For example, let's go a few months later on June 31, 2021, when Netanyahu's leadership ended suddenly despite the success of normalizing relations with Arab countries. Let me be more clear, Donald Trump has been the most Zionist president in American history.
President Trump, Donald, Sarah and I are absolutely delighted to welcome you and Melania to the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the Jewish people, the united capital of the Jewish state.
The Hebrew media always referred to him as Israel's best friend among other American presidents. The close relationship between Trump and Netanyahu was to the extent that Trump used all his influence to make the normalization of relations between Israel and the UAE possible. Even the change of Israel's capital from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which became known as the deal of the century, was done with the cooperation of Trump.
Your deal of the century is the opportunity of the century. And rest assured, Israel will not miss this opportunity.
The 4 years of Trump's presidency are full of significant and influential points in the history of Israel. All these things made Netanyahu become the best partner for Trump and the American Republican Party. But in January 2021, something happened suddenly. Trump lost the presidential race to Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. Even despite this incident, the Israeli government did not change its positions against maintaining relations with the Republicans, and shortly before 2022, we saw the change of the successful government of Israel. The first effects of Trump's fall were seen in Israel, which built its foreign and domestic relations with his help. But this alone was not enough to start the disaster. Political power in Israel was gradually falling. In his first term, Netanyahu held the leadership position for 12 years, 2 months and 14 days, but the leadership period of the next person, Naftali Bennett, was only 1 year and 19 days. And he could not control the power and was removed very soon. The next person who assumed the leadership position of Israel was Yair Lapid, a person who did not even go to university.
I think we are surrounded by people who now don't like anyone who's different from them.
He was also able to hold the leadership position for only 5 months and 29 days. Between 2020 and 2022, Israel changed its government 3 times, and after Netanyahu, no one could solve the problems that had arisen. Until Netanyahu acted for leadership again and became the first power of Israel as the best option. At this time, the opposing fronts of Israel took advantage of Israel's confusion and found an opportunity to become powerful. After Netanyahu regained power, he made some changes. The changes that were supposed to solve the problems of political instability, but these changes brought instability to the military sector as well. The first of a series of controversial changes aimed at limiting the power of the courts was passed. This law denied the power of the Supreme Court to decide on the actions of the government that it considered unreasonable. These changes would allow Netanyahu to take more serious decisions against Hamas. Of course, these were not all the changes, and the government intended to take over the administration of the judiciary by directly electing judges. This volume of changes was sudden and caused popular protests. And Mr. Netanyahu's political competition, many former top commanders of the army and intelligence and security services, former heads of the judiciary, prominent legal and business figures supported the protesters. Insecurity and instability were high until now, but it continued to the point where hundreds of thousands of Army Reserve forces, including Air Force pilots, threatened to leave the service. The threat of leaving the service would have a serious impact on the Israeli army's operational ability. All these successive changes in leadership, the reduction of political interactions and the emergence of military instability became the founders of a historical disaster in Israel. A country with this power and technology is witnessing the fall of its settlements and their control by a military group.
Israel is at war. We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us in the most brutal and savage way. Hamas will understand that by attacking us, they've made a mistake of historic proportions. The savage attacks that Hamas perpetrated against innocent Israelis are mind-boggling, slaughtering families in their homes, massacring hundreds of young people at an outdoor festival, kidnapping scores of women, children, and elderly, even Holocaust survivors.